We are looking forward our way from Studio C in the 511 studios in the Brewery District just south of downtown Columbus, Ohio. Hi, this is Brett. We have a very special program today. It's not an easy subject, but our acknowledgement of the issues and recognition that we must be vigilant could literally save a life. The SOAP Project was created by Theresa in 2006. Theresa is an advocate, author, and survivor. Now, SOAP stands for Save Our Adolescents from Prostitution. This agency is volunteer-driven and serves to save young children from human trafficking. We want to welcome Theresa to our studio.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks so much for inviting me.
Yeah.
Theresa, it's really nice to finally meet you. We've talked, done the deep dives into your website, and we really appreciate your time today. It's a hard topic, and many of us are dumbfounded. We don't know what to do. So we really thought this was a great opportunity to sit and talk to you. We usually ask our guests first to give to provide us with an overview on how their career path led them to their current position. Well, this is literally your life story. So please give us, the audience, a glimpse of your world as a young girl, the journey you've taken, and how it led to the creation of SOAP.
Yeah, well, so I was a medical social worker here in Columbus for many years. And it's kind of funny. I went to a conference that a coworker recommended that I go to, and it was on human trafficking. And this was when I was 40. So this was about 18, 19 years ago. And I thought, well, this is interesting. I don't know much about human trafficking. Maybe some of my clients, have had this happen. It'd be good education. So I agreed and went. And lo and behold, within 5 minutes of sitting in this conference here in Columbus, I realized that was me. And it was like my kind of Oprah aha moment where, wow, God has prepared this whole life for me to be able to do something about this now. Because how many other people don't know about human trafficking too? If I didn't even know, and here I had just graduated from University of Dayton with my master's, I, lived that, and yet I never knew it was called that. So, I thought this is what I need to do, is to really wake people up and shout from the highest mountain that this is kids in every zip code, and people just aren't looking at it. So that's kind of how I started with this whole advocacy and activist. I never thought I'd be an activist, but doing this. So for me, I just grew up a normal kid, an average upper middle class family, 2 parents. Not abused, not molested, didn't do drugs, wasn't promiscuous, just your normal, go to church on Sunday, 3 younger brothers. I was the oldest, the only girl. And you would think that kind of lifestyle would exempt me, because that's what media tells us, right? Is that this is poor kids, this is other countries. And I didn't fit any of those parameters. And yet it did happen to me. We moved a lot because of my dad's job. He would get promoted and transferred. And so we moved a lot. And that's what made me vulnerable, is that I didn't have a support system. So we forget that it doesn't matter how rich or poor you are. Support systems are essential into protecting our vulnerable. And so I went to high school, and a guy just noticed me. And I thought it was innocent at first, but I wasn't permitted to date. So my mom and dad were pretty strict with me, and he was very diligent. We call this grooming, which is actually kind of like that old-fashioned term courting, but with malintent, and I had no idea. But he asked me if I wanted to ride home from school one day. It was that simple. And I was like, sure, it's a ride home from school. And he didn't take me home, though. He ended up taking me to his house. He gave me some excuse that he had forgotten something, and I was very vulnerable. I was just very naive, and asked me if I wanted to come inside. And I was like, no, I can't do that. But then he convinced me, and then he ended up drugging me and raping me. And I thought that was bad enough, right? Because I was a virgin, but yet a couple days later it got worse, because I guess there were some people in his family that were there taking pictures, and then they blackmailed me with these photos for 2 years to do whatever they said. So for about 2 years, I went to school during the day, went home in the afternoons, would get called out by them on my phone and would have to sneak out, and they would take me all over the Detroit area to do whatever they needed me to do. So it was a pretty horrific way to live my high school years.
Did this guy ever? I mean, did justice ever happen? It just
No. There was no law against human trafficking back then. They didn't even know this was happening here in the United States, and I didn't know it was called trafficking. So by the time that I realized, that I could probably get justice, I had already, been in college, called the police department. Of course, I didn't have these words that I do now. And they're like, sorry, we can't help you. Like, it's a 6-year limitation for rape. Mm-hmm. And it's like, okay, this is not going to work out for me. So fast forward to, being 40 years old. And I have just determined that this is what my justice looks like, is by doing things like this.
Yeah. Stopping it before.
Yeah.
As opposed to, yeah, absolutely.
Right. You gave a great picture in regards to, us to stop saying this can't happen in my neighborhood, or my family isn't affected, or it can't be our neighbors. It's just we're too well off, that sort of thing. It's a really good picture of sadly what you had to go through, but it's an example.
Right.
There are over 1.3 million missing and runaway children in the U.S. Can you talk to us about human trafficking and why it really is in our own neighborhood?
Yeah, so Ohio is ranked the top 5 in the country of states for trafficking. A lot of that is due to the highway systems, and plus, I have to say Ohio is very good at of going and doing these stings and rescuing people. So of course your number is going to be higher, but it takes into account the number of calls to the hotline. And so we have quite a few calls that come into the hotline either as tips or as victims needing to get out. So this is the second leading crime in the United States. And I've been doing this for 18 years, and I can tell you probably 90% of every audience that I go and speak to have no idea that. And so that itself infuriates me as a survivor, that if this is the second leading crime, why aren't we talking about this on the nightly news? This is really needs to be blasted out. And so I do thank you for that. But the statistics are horrendous. We have 1.3 million missing and runaway kids in our country. Again, where are they going? Who's, what's happening to them? That's another statistic that is really, impactful when we think of our children out there on the streets. 80% we believe 80% are women, but we are thinking that a lot more men have been trafficked than we previously knew. It can be up to 40% survivors are male, and then 50% are children. So this is a very, very huge issue that's not being addressed in this country.
Is there a way for us to make that more known in the media? I mean, unfortunately, everything is buried in the politics, which never stops. It used to be, about a month every year we talked politics, and now it's 24/7.
Right.
Yeah. But isn't there some way that this can become more ingrained?
I do think it needs to be done by media, by, journalists, by people that are passionate about getting this out there. It's, unfortunately, it can be very sensational because we're talking sex trafficking. Oh my gosh, but there's also a lot of labor trafficking even in Ohio. And so really getting journalists on board to talk about this in appropriate terms. A lot of times the terms that they're using are not appropriate.
Right. Or very sensational.
Very sensational, yeah. So I do believe that media can help with this.
Well, you think about the children that they found who were working in the meatpacking plants, migrant children here illegally,
right.
And all of the emphasis was on the fact that they were illegal, not that we were having 10-year-olds working in a meatpacking plant.
Right. Yeah. The focus is on the incorrect part. Right. Yeah.
Right.
Goodness gracious. So, okay. Well, we're going to keep, we're probably going to go off on all kinds of tangents as Brett mentioned earlier. So SOAP has provided services to young victims for 14 years. Tell us more about the agency, the mission, how you engage with communities and volunteers to create these needed support programs.
Yeah, so I was going around the country sharing my story and educating audiences on trafficking. Churches, social or civic groups, high schools, colleges, and people would get really upset and be like, "Oh my gosh, I've never heard of this. How come I haven't heard of this? What can I do?" And I was like, I don't know what you can do. Just don't go buy sex. Don't go to strip clubs. If you see something that's unusual, say something, even if you're wrong. Donate money to organizations or pray about it, And it's like, that was all I had. And I was coming home from Detroit one night, and I realized there was more people could do. There's a lot of Theresas that are still in those motels being left for dead. And I thought, we can reach them. But we need people to help us. There's a hotline number. Like when I was being trafficked, there was no hotline number. And I thought, she doesn't know there's a hotline number. And these hotels and motels think that he or she is just there by choice. And nobody does this by choice. So I thought, why don't I get people to help me put the hotline number on, say, a bar of soap and give it to a hotel for free. And they can put it in their rooms and she could find it. And she would have a way to call somebody to get out. And so that was 14 years ago. We started getting people to help us put the labels on bars of soap. Now we actually also have makeup remover wipes for higher end hotels and educational information for hotels. And we give them the missing children's posters. So I make up these posters before any outreach across the country, a few days before the actual outreach, of kids that are missing locally. And I can't tell you how many times, when we show them to the housekeepers, the front desk staff, they're like, "Oh yeah, she was in here last week. Oh yeah." And I'm like, okay, now when you see her, now you'll know what to do. So it's been really amazing because people of any age can do this. So we've had families bring their 4-year-old kids and put labels on bars of soap. We've had 94-year-old nuns sit there and label soap. And it's really, the hotels and motels have been very gracious, very willing to take it because they don't want this happening either. Mm-hmm. A lot of them are family people, and they didn't realize it was happening too. They thought that they were there willingly.
So if somebody wants to do that work, they can just contact you through the website and find out when you're putting those labels on.
Yeah, so we generally follow big sporting events for our national team. So we do every Super Bowl. We do Kentucky Derby, the Arnold here. We go the Final Four, First Four, wherever a lot of people are coming to a town, especially men, and because that's who the buyers are. And so then we go to all of those big events around the country. But then we also have chapters that start up after those of people that are like, wow, this was really cool. I want to keep doing this. And so we have currently 25 chapters around the country. We're looking for more in more of the big cities like Boston and Baltimore, places like that. We're trying to get exposure to, and on the West Coast. But people can join a chapter. They can go onto our website and see where their chapters are and contact the president of that chapter. So that's ongoing.
Okay. And this is all volunteers?
All volunteers.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Good. So the program's designed to reach out to possible trafficking victims through the bars of soap, as you mentioned. How does it work specifically? You kind of mentioned, the volunteers, what they're doing, but also the other services and programs that provide that outreach effort that you're doing.
Yeah. So once a victim sees that bar of soap, she or he will call that number, and that goes to Polaris Project in Washington, D.C. They're manned 24/7 in like 116 languages. And they determine if she wants to get out right now, if she just wants to talk, like what is her needs. And they know locally for wherever she's calling, who is the local contact that has been trained in this and can either come get her or call the police who've been trained. And so then they put all those pieces of the puzzle together. So we don't get those phone calls, that goes to them. And then hopefully the goal is that she gets out of the situation. Law enforcement will hopefully get her services, if it's maybe addiction services or housing, FBI victims advocates can come in sometimes and help with that, because obviously their goal is prosecution of the trafficker. Our goal is just to get her to safety and get her out of that and start her healing journey. So that's as much hands-on as we have with that part of it. So I call it like we're planting the seeds.
Okay.
We do all the legwork and let Polaris and law enforcement take over after that.
I was just going to ask how, I can't imagine you're allowing volunteers to be in a dangerous situation.
Yeah.
But again, it can happen, of course, but that's not the intent.
No,
It's
we don't do any of that.
Set it up, and then the sting happens
Correct.
by the phone call or however that victim is looking to be helped.
Yep, by the professionals that are already trained in doing it. Our volunteers are just boots on the ground laying down those seeds.
How long has the Polaris Project been around?
Probably 15 years, I would say, maybe 20, as long as I've been doing this.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you have any clue how many phone calls they're getting every year?
They get quite a few. If you're talking about Ohio, you can go right online and you can see their yearly report of how many phone calls they get by state. Okay. So, hundreds of thousands.
Wow.
Yeah.
When you were talking about Ohio being in the top five in the U.S., when you think about it, Ohio has a large number of metropolitan areas.
We do, yeah.
More so than a lot of other states.
Right.
And so it makes sense that it's going to more likely be in large cities than out in the hinterlands. It's harder to hide, I would think.
Interesting. So we have a lot of what we call familial trafficking in the rural areas, especially in Ohio and Michigan. I work a lot in Michigan too. So yeah, you're going to see more of the maybe those that have addiction issues and more of the trafficking of over 18 in your big cities. But you're going to see more of the younger ones being trafficked in the rural areas and that goes missed a lot by children's services, teachers. It's a really horrendous, those situations. And it's, like I said, very much rural areas for that.
But again, that's that family connection.
Yeah.
What you went through and what kids are going through today, the abusers have a support system supporting the abuse, and the victims are left on their own.
Correct.
Yeah. Well, this is, again, we're going down a little bit of a hole here, but in my mind, I'm thinking, so the traffickers are obviously getting smarter.
Yes. About,
first thing I go check is the soap. Or not? Are they really stupid? Are they just really pretty stupid?
I think it's a combination of both. I mean, but yeah.
Because once more and more the word gets out, you're going to have to become smarter in what you do too. Right. Change things up, and that again, I just that. How do you keep evolving? I guess that's my question.
Yeah. Well, we've evolved in the things that we give in hotels, because a lot of hotels now have like the pump, soaps. And so I'm like, oh,
there
no.
you go. Okay, right.
Yeah.
You just think because it's never static.
Correct. The nice thing is, the pimps, which a pimp is a trafficker, they generally don't go into the hotel rooms. They generally will drop her off at the front desk.
Okay.
She'll go in, stay there all night. He'll make the phone calls of who's coming every half hour, and then pick her up in the morning when she's made him the money that she has to make.
Okay.
So generally, sure, there's probably a rare few that will go in, maybe a rare few that will see that, red label on the soaps. But I'm not going to get concerned about the one or two, because of the sheer magnitude. I mean, we've given out 3 million bars of soap since we started this. So,
Good. No. Again, it's that. How it evolves, how are you getting smarter and smarter to effectively get to these victims? Yeah, right. Yeah. Okay.
So you mentioned that you're going to large events where it's sporting events, men come, and 3 million bars of soap is a lot of soap.
It is a lot.
How do you determine where the next events are going to be? But also, isn't this part of a national network of volunteers that are with other groups that are doing the same kinds of things?
No, we're the only ones doing this.
Okay, so that nationally it's your chapters.
It is us. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So we run it. I have a national team that consists of law enforcement, retired fire chiefs that come from all around the country. So from Charlotte, from Detroit, Columbus, we have quite a few, and that they go to these big outreaches that we plan, and then we partner up with local organizations, maybe the Junior League, YWCA. We partner with a lot of churches and get the volunteers to come together.
Okay.
So a lot of work goes into a big, national outreach like the Super Bowl, and each one of those kinds of outreaches costs us about $12,000 to $15,000 just to be able to get enough materials printed and soaps and all of that together. So we do that nationwide, and then, like I said, the local ones will continue doing it. So I was just, a lot of time you asked how we know where to go. So sometimes it'll just be somebody reaching out to me saying, hey, I live in San Antonio. Have you thought about doing the Final Four next year? I'm like, oh, I hadn't. Let's do it. And so really getting those connections of who is local, who wants to help. We had 2 people call us from Tucson and say, hey, did you know the GEM show is going on next year? And we'd like to do an outreach. I'm like, didn't think the GEM show would be bringing a lot of trafficking, but why not? And so it doesn't have to be a big sporting event, just a big event where a lot of people are coming, because that we know the traffickers will be there because that means more money for them. So we're going to be there too.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Have you ever had any connection to the local, what are the organizations that deal with travel to cities?
Yeah.
The Experience Columbus, who brings in all of these huge conventions. And
Experience Columbus has been great. Like they'll take our brochures and stuff and give them to the hotels and motels before the Arnold, so that they can display them in the front lobby. They, and actually the Hotel and Lodging Association, especially here for Ohio, has been very supportive. A lot of the different hotels will, even their staff will buy some bars of soap and label it for us and donate it back. Red Roof Inn, their corporate headquarters is here in Columbus, and they've been extremely supportive. They have paid for the printing of our missing children's posters every time. And so it works.
As you said, these hotel folks are family people, but also it's their business. Yeah. Why would they want their business tainted by something like that? So
correct. Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. Phenomenal.
Well, when you hear the words prostitution and human trafficking, we usually think of young women, and we talked about this already, that young men are just as vulnerable. Are those services a little bit different? Is the approach a little bit different for men than versus women in regards to that phone call that you get from a young man? And, is it a little different?
Yeah, so we've been starting to work with male survivors. We have a wellness weekend that we do for survivors every year, and last year we did a very special male survivor wellness weekend to help find out what are their needs, how are they different than females, and we found that they're really not a lot different. But the shame and the guilt for men is a lot different than for females, so it's very hard for them to come forward, and it might take years and years. So we try to really find out how we can help them. Unfortunately, there are very, very few resources for male survivors. If you're thinking residential programs, supportive, mental health program, addiction, it is very difficult. And it is something that we're working on trying to really do a better job on services for males specifically. Yeah,
I think that I think generally it's hard to wrap your head around a male being a prostitute or forced into it. Prostituted, yes, thank you. Just by history, that sort of thing. But it's that eye-opening. It does exist. You don't have to try to understand it. It just exists and does take care of it.
And I think one of the things that makes it easier to understand is if you approach it from the point of view that nobody wants to do this. In our country, we think of prostitution as a choice that people make. It's, I can't tell you how many times I've heard, well, it's a profession. It is not a profession. This is an oppression of people. And so if we think of it as they're being forced to do this, somebody is behind them always forcing them to do this. So it is a very, very small number. I mean, like 2 to 4% that are what we call sex workers that are doing this by choice. But we also know many of those people that say they're doing it by choice actually were trafficked as younger children. So we have to always remember that they're not a prostitute. They're being prostituted, or were prostituted by somebody.
Right. Going back to your question about young men, people think that they can protect themselves. That they're stronger than girls, or that they can run faster or whatever.
Right.
But it goes back to that notion when you were talking about being vulnerable, being naive,
Sure.
and that the potential of other things coming into play, like drug use.
Right.
Or being blackmailed.
And being blackmailed,
The shame.
being homeless,
Yeah.
being for whatever
The
reason.
LGBTQ kids that are kicked out, they are very, very vulnerable,
Right.
becoming trafficked. So that's a whole, the homeless and LGBTQ for sure. Yeah.
We've already sort of touched on this, but I think it's important to talk about it again. I live here in Central Ohio. I've never known anybody that I knew of that was trafficked. I mean, who knows?
Right.
Somebody hit it well. What should I be doing as part of the general public? What can we ask our listeners to think about in terms of saving these young lives?
Really, like looking for the signs, right? Or if you see something that just looks suspicious and doesn't feel right, then, call the hotline number, call 911. If you're in a hotel and you see an older man with a younger girl and she's just not looking up, little eye contact, and you just have that feeling like, wow, this is kind of unusual. You can say something to her like, hey, are you okay? Trying to, get her alone, go to the bathroom. Nursing professions, have a really advantageous way that they can get to victims. But even, just the neighbor, like my neighbor saw me run through his backyard several nights a week at midnight in my pajamas. And yet he never said anything to my parents. Like, I wish that he would have said, hey, do you know that your daughter's going out at night? And I mean, that would have probably saved me from years of this happening. But he didn't. And what did he think? Maybe he thought, oh, she's just, a bad kid, or she's just out fooling around. But I had pajamas on, so look beyond just the surface of it. If you were at Easton and you saw a young girl, maybe inappropriately dressed, kind of outside waiting, just that they're 13 years of age at 1 a.m. after you got out of a movie or left the Funny Bone, go up to her and say, can I help you, honey? I wish, people would just say, can I help you? And even if she says no, at least you tried,
Yeah.
And if you see something, if you really think oh my gosh, this is not good for this child, call the police, It doesn't matter if you're wrong. I'm going to give you permission to be wrong, because what happens if you're right and you didn't do anything? So.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So community members can also support SOAP through donations and volunteering. Can you provide some suggestions on how donations are utilized, also the types of volunteer opportunities available at the agency too?
Yeah, so we're a small organization, but we are mighty. We do a lot of work. I am the only full-time paid employee, and I get very little because we want all of our money to go towards services for survivors. So we just have a very small staff, work out of my house, and keep expenses low. But we really rely on those donations to keep us going. We get a few small grants. It's been very hard to get grants. It's very competitive lately. And it's just a lot of us are struggling financially to do this work, which is a shame because it needs to be done. It's the second leading crime. So we look a lot at churches, individual donors, just to help out. Like I said, the big SOAP outreaches are about $12,000 to $15,000, and that all goes for supplies for these outreaches. So the next one being New Orleans, right? Getting there and doing all that. That's probably going to be, oh my gosh, probably 30,000 bars of soap to go just at least for that. And then another thing that we do is those wellness weekends for the survivors. Those are really becoming a lifeline for these survivors who maybe don't even know another survivor, who've never talked about it, who don't know how to de-stress when they're getting activated and triggered. We pour into them, mind, body, and soul. And so we do that completely free. We're the only organization in the United States that will fly survivors, no matter where they're from, to our wellness weekends and provide it completely free for them. We want to remove all these barriers. 60% of survivors live under the poverty line. A lot are struggling with addictions. This is when men buy somebody for sex, it is not victimless. Like, a lot of damage is done each time. So, and these are layer upon layer of trauma. So the money that we raise goes into these wellness weekends. We try to do a conference each year on an issue that hasn't really been talked about. So male survivor trafficking, we do a conference on that. We also have a support group in Michigan that's for northwestern Ohio, and then all of Michigan. We have about 20 survivors that come every month to our support group because that connectivity is really important to healing. So
back to the conference, is that open if somebody would like to attend?
Yeah, we're just trying to raise money actually right now to be able to have another one.
Do you have a date for that?
We were looking at September, October, and we'd like to have another male survivor wellness weekend by the end of the year as well, to help these men really heal.
Who would benefit from being at the conference? Are social workers or, as you said, nurses?
Yeah, anybody that works with kids, right, or in the mental health field or addictions. So CASA have been great at coming, CASA volunteers, social workers, nursing, law enforcement, children's services, anybody that works in the schools. You know, the schools are really behind the eight ball on this. So all of those kind of professions should be there and need to know this.
Yeah. I'm not a big advocate on necessarily that government can fix all, but they do have the power of law and helping out. Have you had any success with state level legislators or on the national level in regards to getting their ear to recognize? I mean, like you said, it's the second largest crime going on.
Right.
State by state, you would think that they would kind of go, well, what can we do to help here?
Yeah, and that's kind of how I started doing this, was going to that conference. Some state legislators were there and saying, the questions in the audience were like, well, how many is this happening to? And they're like, we don't even know, because a lot of survivors aren't coming forward and talking about it. And that moment that I realized I was a survivor, I went right up to them and said, I will give you my voice. Because we do need laws. There wasn't even a law against human trafficking in Ohio before 2000. So I testified in front of the Senate and the House to get these laws passed. One of the laws we got passed was the safe harbor law. Now every state has this law where you're not allowed to arrest a minor for prostitution, knowing that that's not prostitution, it's human trafficking. And it took 5 years to get that passed, which is crazy that it would take you 5 years to convince somebody that, we shouldn't arrest minors for, prostituting because somebody we know is, doing that to them. But I also was able to get a lot of laws passed in Michigan. And one of them, a senator had asked me, what can we do? What can we do for survivors? What do they need? And so she came up with a package of 22 bills and got 21 of them passed at once. And one of the bills I'm particularly fond of and proud of is that they removed the statute of limitation for minors being trafficked. So when I realized that something had happened to me and I wanted some justice, but not having those words, and was turned down, it was because the statute of limitations was over for anything. And so I said, after 6 years, I still didn't know I was trafficked. After 15 years, which a lot of times is a statute of limitations, I didn't know I was trafficked. After 20 years, I wasn't ready to talk. And so they removed the statute of limitations. So if you're a minor in Michigan and you get trafficked, you can go back and get justice no matter how old you are. And they call it the Theresa Flores law. So that was pretty darn cool.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
To have your name on something, good.
I know.
Good.
Yeah.
Yes.
But we definitely, I think we do have really good laws across this country on trafficking. We just don't have the resources really to go after it like we need to. There's not enough law enforcement, not enough prosecutors that are going to take these cases. And victims are very scared to testify. So it's a big problem all the way around.
Yeah.
And especially if it's a young person going up against the defendant who is maybe well known in the community or whatever. They said, this person said, he said, she said kind of thing. And
how do you prove it?
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
And they have that fear, that terror. They just want their life back, and so there's some groups out there, some biker groups that have a organization that they will go with the victim to court and sit with her,
cool.
just to be like, very intimidating, but for the other person, right? And then like protecting her, and that's really cool when they do that.
Oh, that's really, that's wonderful.
I know.
So you've got some events coming up, and also any new programs in the pipeline?
Gosh, we just need more funding for new programs. My dream, my desire is to really start a dental program for survivors. Probably 90% of all the survivors I know are have severe dental issues and no insurance to pay for it. One of my dear friends, she's a survivor, and she actually was trafficked by a group, escaped, and thought she was in the clear and was, really excited. And they caught her again, brought her back, and they removed every one of her top teeth as a punishment. So even after she got out of it, you have that daily reminder of that. And so we've helped her raise $30,000 for complete new dentures. And so, and there's a long list. We have a long list of survivors that need dental help from around the country, not just here in Columbus. So that's my dream, to be able to start that program eventually. We would like to have another retreat for the male, another conference, and then just really too raising money for this next outreach in the Super Bowl. It's going to be probably our biggest Super Bowl outreach that we've done yet in 14 years.
So we mentioned there are other agencies working together as a network to support for trafficking victims throughout the country. Can you give some examples of the resources in Ohio we should know of for somebody that's in need?
Yeah. So depending on where you are, obviously, you could just Google human trafficking organizations, near me. In Columbus, we have the Central Ohio Rescue and Restore Coalition. They meet monthly at the Salvation Army on Main Street. That's the first Wednesday of every month. And it's open to people that just want to learn more about human trafficking, join a group and see how they can help. There's the Collaborative Initiative Against Human Trafficking in Cleveland. University of Toledo does a lot of amazing work. And then Cincinnati, Eyes Open International. So there's a lot of, Ohio really, I have to tell you, has an amazing amount of anti-human trafficking organizations compared to any other state. And I'm not saying that just because I'm from here. I travel a lot. And our law enforcement, our Attorney General, Dave Yost, has been very supportive of trying to take down these traffickers. So we're really fortunate here. People that want to volunteer, they can go onto our website. It's www.soapproject.org. We have a special volunteer section. They can sign up and just say, how they want to help, where they're at. And so there is a lot that people can do. If you belong to a church, to a civic group, if your kids go to a certain school, getting speakers out there and talking about this, really getting people aware and educated is the number one way we can stop this.
You had mentioned, too, Homeland Security at website, and there are other governmental organizations that just explain what it is. If you're new to this topic and you're still confused, there are places to go to get that information.
Yeah, Polaris Project, again, has one of the best websites to explain stuff. Homeland Security. The Blue Campaign is a really good one as well. They have things that you can print off. They have posters. If you own a business, getting these posters. Ohio has a really great law. Anybody that has a license, some sort of licensure, has to have a 1-hour human trafficking training every year. So that's cosmetologists. That's, massage therapists, it's social workers, teachers, anybody in the healthcare field. So I'm really proud of that law that we have here.
Theresa, one other resource that people can go to, particularly if they have questions are your books.
Oh, yeah.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about The Slave Across the Street?
Okay, so this is my baby. So I wrote my first book, The Sacred Bath, when I first realized I was a survivor. And I just, I kind of vomited all of these, memories and everything. And then I got an amazing publisher and agent, and we turned it into The Slave Across the Street. And it has been a bestseller. It is my memoir. And now we have the 10-year anniversary edition of it. Because when I first wrote it, I wasn't ready to probably recognize some of the family issues that went into it. And I'm still having memories coming back, which is very typical. So this edition talks about my story of being trafficked. Because a lot of people have heard my story on TEDx or, the Today Show, things like that. And they see what I do now, but they don't know those middle years of what the PTSD looked like and the effects that the trafficking had on. I didn't just wake up and become this, professional speaker and, activist. It took a long time, a lot of bad decisions, and things like that. So the 10-year anniversary is really a full look at how I got victimized, what I went through to get to where I am today.
And then you also have a student's guide to modern day slavery.
Yeah, Slavery in the Land of the Free. This one's been approved by the New Jersey Board of Education. So it is a book that is available to any student in New Jersey. I'd like to have every state do that. And it is an educational book for middle and high school students on what is human trafficking. Let's get to where the average age of entry into trafficking in the U.S. is 13 years of age. So we need to reach them, right? And so we talk about labor trafficking, sex trafficking globally, overseas and here. And then at the end of each chapter is a freedom fighter challenge for the students to do, like go to your closet and write down all the different countries that your clothes were made in, and then start researching that, because not everybody got paid to make your clothes. And so we really want to wake up students. Anybody of any age can read it, but we wanted something that was at a student's level, a resource book that they could write a paper on, because these kids are really interested in this issue and they know it's happening.
Mm-hmm. So. They will hear about it from their friends long before a parent or a teacher or anyone else will hear.
Yeah, it's crazy because people are like, aren't you afraid of what to say to kids or like what they'll hear? They know already. They know what's going on. And they just need help putting those pieces of the puzzle together and, helping out their friend if this is happening to their friend or themselves.
And being believed by that parent,
sure,
or the person they tell that they're not just making something up.
Yeah,
they've got their facts. Like, I know what I'm talking about.
I know. When I talk to students, there's always a line of students waiting to talk to me in private afterwards. Like, what about this situation? It's like, yeah, you know more than you should be knowing about this right now.
At 13.
And, so I do a lot of Catholic schools, and we had a boy come up to us afterwards just in tears and saying, this is happening to me right now. And so we, talked to the principal and this counselor, and they said, we were going to expel him tomorrow because he has been acting out so badly. We had no idea. And I'm like, I'm so glad that I was here to, be able to make him feel safe enough to open up. So, yeah.
This is an amazing topic. And Brett and I talked a lot about, is this something that we wanted to have on the podcast? And thank you so much. I have to give a shout out to my friend, Deb Hall-Bonatti, who is with the Westerville Lions. She's the one who called me and said, you have got to put her on your podcast program. This is incredible. It really is. And so I hope you'll come back and tell us more sometime. Keep us updated on what's going on. Listeners, we're going to make sure you've got all the resources on our website to what you're going to need if you or somebody needs help. We always ask our guests to give us last words of wisdom. Anything we haven't mentioned that you want to make sure that people hear, or reiterate what we've already said?
Really like I said earlier, that this is happening all around us in every single zip code. We work so hard, right, to get educated, to move to the suburbs, to go to, send our kids to great schools, and think that they're safe. Mm-hmm. But really, unfortunately, nobody is safe from this happening. These traffickers are so good at this, and they're making so much money right underneath our nose. So we just have to do a better job as neighbors, as churchgoers, as teachers, whatever, to be looking for these signs, because nobody should have to go through this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, many thanks to our expert, Theresa Flores, founder and president of the SOAP Project, for joining us today. Listeners, thank you for joining us. Don't forget to check out our website show notes for contact information and the resources we just discussed today. You can find all of this at lookingforwardourway.com, and we are looking forward to hearing your feedback on this or any of our other podcast episodes.